And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. If y'all are new to us on the Amazon side, welcome. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button, though, before you leave. You'll see it either here in this corner or down below. Also, you see some of the books from our next guest. We're excited to welcome back Dr. Velma Bagby to our broadcast today. We're in a special segment that we've been doing around her new series called the Catch Series. Today we're discussing book number 3. You guys can see it here. I tried to color coordinate a little bit, Dr. Velma. With the wrong catch, she'll tear down the house. So we're going to talk to Dr. Velma about the new book, what it's been like for her to see the response. This is the latest book in the series. And make sure you guys join us next week when we're going to be talking about the entire series and definitely want to get your feedback from that as well. I should mention, too, we are simulcasting this. So welcome to those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. But Dr. Velma, glad to have you back on with us.
Thank you, Cyrus. It's a pleasure. I always enjoy myself when I come on, so I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I always enjoy it as well, and I know our audience do as well. A lot of great conversations we've been able to have around these series, and it's great to be able to have these past couple weeks, Dr. Velma. We can just focus on one book, and we're going to do that again today with the newest book, The Wrong Catch, She'll Tear Down the House. We do have it highlighted for you guys on Amazon, so you guys will see it in the carousel there. You can get the Kindle edition for only 99 cents, as you can see there. Also, of course, you can be able to get the paperback as I have it as well. So, Dr. Velma, this is the latest book. When you first released it, you said it was like giving birth again. So talk to us about what it's been like for you to present this baby and see the way people are responding to it.
I think it's just the year that I had. I was experiencing some health issues as a result of being rear-ended in a car accident. So my shoulder froze in February, and I had a difficult time completing it. And so when I refer to it as like giving birth, that's exactly what happened. I had to utilize all kinds of tools, such as the dictation system. I mean, much of it had been done, but my diagnosis didn't come through until July. So I spent all that time in pain, basically. And so that's what I refer to. And sometimes that is the process. Sometimes we have those challenges that come up as writers, and we try to work around it to get the task done. And that's what happened with this particular book.
Such a great point. Manswell, hello to you. Good to be able to see you on the Facebook side. He says hello to you as well, Dr. Velma. So I think as we kind of dive into the third book, The Wrong Catch, She'll Tear Down the House, I think people were interested as to where you were going to go with this one, Dr. Velma, because, again, it all started with The Catch No One Wants. You all can see it there. It is in the carousel for you guys joining us on Amazon. And then you had The Wrong Catch that took basically the principles of The Catch No One Wants and was able to present it in a way where the women were able to come together and learn from Veronica and Grayson about, the different types of men they need to be aware of. And now with The Wrong Catch, and again, you tease this at the end of this book, The Wrong Catch, She'll Tear Down the House, you now are able to have the men come together and have these conversations. Now, Myra, hello to you. Good to be able to see you as well. I have to be honest, I live a very simple life, Dr. Velma. However, I have not gone to a barbershop in 10 years. I do have a barber that comes to the house as part of my thing. So I don't actually. But it's funny. I bring that up for this reason. I hear when I've been telling my friends about this, I'm like, oh, yeah, we talk about that in the barbershop all the time. So I have not been a part of those conversations personally. But what has it been like for you to take conversations like that, Dr. Velma, and put them in a book like this where men and women can be able to talk about it's not always the guys that's the problem?
That's right. Well, I've had lots of conversations with my own husband. As a pastor, he had to work with the men, had conversations with friends, family members that are male. And he, from time to time, had mentioned, you really should do a book for the men. I said, okay, we'll see. Then when the readers started reaching out, the male readers, I didn't know I had a pocket of male readers reading that book. But that's how it's designed. It's not designed just for women, even though that was my focus initially. It can benefit both sides, even the new one that's released. They asked, when are you going to talk about? So I decided to have some conversations with a few men that I knew and wanted to get their input about what their challenges were. And that's how these characters were written. That's how they came to life. And it's not like many of the things I talk about in there I have not seen or heard. And so that's what made it so interesting. But my husband said, because this was the most difficult book for you to release, this has to be the one.
Wow. Well, so let's talk about that for a second, because I think, well, you said something, we've never talked about this actually, Dr. Velma.
Uh-huh.
You just said something interested, that you didn't know you had a pocket of men, reading these
Yeah.
books. But I think that goes to the stereotype also that
Yep.
fits Christian fiction. Because
Uh-huh.
I think some people, I don't know where this came from, believe that only women read Christian fiction, which is very strange to me.
Right.
But that is something people believe. So
Mm-hmm.
even though you and I had had conversations, and
Mm-hmm.
I have read the books, and you of course had people around you, um, were you really genuinely surprised that other men were interested?
Well, there have been men who have walked with me in this journey.
Hmm.
From the first book, I have family members, who have been supporting me, who are men, all of
Right.
that, had all of that. But when the guys started asking me, can you please write one that focuses on the wrong women? I just thought, wow, that's a point. I need to make sure that I can show the other side, because if you read the book one, book two, you see where the women are pretty much shown some of the errors of their ways, even in their thinking towards men.
Right.
In their thinking, when something goes wrong in the relationship, it's always the blame placed on the man. I'm going, wait a
Right.
minute, that's not the case. Many of the
Right.
times, and I found in my own experience, there's a lot of times where the women were really the problem, not the men at all. And
Hmm.
so that was why this book was so important in response to all of that. So I have family members who are males that have walked on this journey with me and have enjoyed every book. But this
Yeah.
one, just the opening, they said, "Wow, you came out of the gate." And one of the readers said, "I came out of the gate with just hitting men with what they needed to know in that first chapter." So I'm just glad that I'm hearing that kind of response.
Love that. Hello to you, Miss Queenie. Good to be able to see you over there on the Facebook side as well. Again, for those tuning in on the Amazon side, all of the books in the series are in the carousel. But in today's conversation, we're going to focus on this book, the newest book, the Wrong Catch She'll Tear Down the House. Now, I want to say something that is interesting based on what you just said. Because in what we do see in the Wrong Catch, the women are very quick to try to blame
Yep.
the men. We don't see that really with Grayson and the men, as far as them just trying to put everything on the woman. So I want to talk about how you decided you wanted to form that group with the men with Grayson, Dr. Velma, and the
Hmm.
attitudes of the men in that group.
I love the attitude of the men in that group, because that's the side everybody needs to see.
Mm.
Men are not always as critical as many women assume that they are. And I've been in the barbershops, by the way. I had to take my grandson. Many times I had to get out and go sit in my car because there were conversations I didn't really want to hear. And it's interesting that as I had the engagement, there was more engagement in my original manuscript. And I know my editor was saying, well, I don't know, the men are having, and I kept saying to myself, but that's how men respond. That's what I was
Mm.
saying. So I
Yeah.
actually had to tone it down a little bit. How men actually respond to some of those things in there, I had more of an interactive response, because men do respond. And so having gone to the barbershop many times and having to sit outside in my car so that they were free to have their moment, because it's the
Yeah.
same way in the beauty shop. They have those moments in there as well. So it was really an interesting journey, but I think it was important to give that voice to the men as well.
Yeah. We have several that have joined us on the Facebook side, Dr. Ben. I want to say hello to them. Antoinette, hello to you. Good to be able to see you,
Hey.
a fellow Mississippian there. Deborah Owsley, hello to you. Deborah says it goes both ways, and it is
Yep.
definitely true. We're going to get into that, Deborah. Ellen Sutter is joining us. Hello to you,
Hey,
Ellen.
Miss
Good to be able to
Ellen.
see you. Alicia Sadler of Hardcore Grind Magazine is here.
Hey,
Hello to
Nisha.
you as well. Ellen says, oh, not the barbershop. Oh, my goodness.
Right. I had kind of that language in there. And I had, are they really like this?
Yeah.
I took it out.
So I want to talk about two aspects of the Wrong Catch She'll Tear Down the House. I want to begin with something Dr. Grayson talks about that fits into, which is why I teed up the conversation this way.
Hmm.
So for those of you who have the paperback edition of the book, it's chapter 7 that we're going to be looking at first.
Hmm.
And in chapter 7, beginning on page 105,
Hmm.
Grayson is talking to the men, and he says this: Guys, we hear a lot about narcissistic men, but not enough about narcissistic women.
Mm-hmm.
This is a mannerism of this character. Although men are notorious for being this way, there are women who display the same behaviors. This woman expects constant validation and feels entitled to everything. What captivates the man in this woman's life is what occurs in the beginning. She is a flirtatious expert, presenting herself as a good woman. She can pour on the charm early in the relationship, initially hiding her true self. It's my prayer you escape this false presentation of a good woman, because it won't be long before a man will meet her defensive, aggressive side. So I want to talk about that because, again, it goes to the point that Deborah is making, which is it goes both ways. As Grayson says, Grayson is not trying to make it seem like all these men are innocent.
No.
But as he says, just like we hear about narcissism with men, and we do hear about it more with men, I have to say, in the media.
We do.
But it does exist in women. I'm going to get into Roman, so you can go ahead and know that. I'm going to get into Roman in a little bit here, Dr. Velma. But talk to us about that conversation, because it is an important one, about how these traits that sometimes are seen just to be for this person or that person really is something all of us have to deal with.
Well, part of the problem is I've talked about high school dating versus using the better strategy in your dating and being more strategic in how you approach the person, the conversations you have, the questions you ask. And I've said, many times that we now have to use what we used to reserve as questions once you're engaged, those tougher questions once you're engaged, and these are the things you really need to look at. But now you have to include those tougher questions early on, before you fall in love, before you've made the decision this person is the one. You really have to do your due diligence to examine who truly is this person. And looking on the surface will get you in a bad place. And that's what's happening in this story. Many of the men were looking on the exterior of the women, not really examining their hearts and who they really are. And so that's how they got into trouble. And again, some of the women got into the same trouble in book 2, because women had flipped in the beginning over time. I'm talking about from 60s to 2000s. Women used to use more of that approach. We were better at examining the heart of that person that we thought we were interested in. Then it flipped somewhere in the 70s, 80s, 90s, where women began to act just like men. Men have always been notorious, no offense, Cyrus, of looking at the exterior. Well, that doesn't tell you anything. That's what the book proves in every story. Looking at what's on the outside does not give you any clue about who that person truly is. You must examine the heart of who they are. And you got to get into some tough questions. When I interviewed the men in preparation for this book and developing the characters, some of the things they talked about, their experience was real. And so I wanted to make sure I included some of those elements in the book. And so when you see the survey that Grayson did, those are actual responses from the men that I spoke to. So that's how real the book tells the story.
Yeah. Ellen says something here. Let me pull it up. She says, narcissistic women are the worst, but society would not call her that because they don't see that. I think, that is here's the thing. And you said it so well, Dr. Velma. I think, and we as men, we are very visual, and I think but I think you're right. We are seeing, I read some of these comments that some of these ladies write, and they're visual too.
Yes, now they are. They didn't used to be like that. And that's what's getting women into trouble now with bad relationships.
Yeah. And I think too, and I'm not to blame social media for this, I think, but now people feel a lot more comfortable too saying things because they're like, hey, it's not like I'm saying it right in front of you. I can type this, and so I think it's so interesting the way Grayson was able to have that conversation. Let's talk about Roman. How did Roman come about?
I think it was more around the story of the woman and how I wanted to present her, and then thinking about what kind of man would actually fall for her, and that's how he was created. Because I'm telling you, when you think about when I was looking at the people pleaser, that's the story that Roman is in. And the people pleaser, people assume that that type of woman is a very kind-hearted, giving, always serving, doing kind of woman. And behind it, and as I studied narcissism, that's a very common trait of a narcissistic woman, that she disguises her pleasing and being helpful and doing. But beyond that, it's more manipulative, and because she's trying to get what she wants, then you begin to see the narcissism rise to the surface. And so Roman was pretty easy, because I had to figure out how to present him with the people pleaser, and that's Lauren, the people pleaser. And so he was developed once I developed Lauren. That's how I created him.
I want to read two things about Roman that we're able to discover. For those who have the paperback edition of the book, starting on page 141, this is what is said about Roman. Many times my walk to lunch became a prayer walk. I used to use the time to talk to God about my life, a wife, and my job. Now, that sounds great. And, kudos to Roman, because that's what all of us should want to do as we're having conversations with God.
It's somewhere on the list.
Right. Now, he goes on to talk about this woman, and he sees the way she interacts with others. And I do the same thing. A lot of times it's not just about, how she treats you, it's how, she deals with other people. You're watching that. This particular lady was well liked, but he goes on to say this. Fast forward to page 149, when he's about to get the first kiss. And he's talking about it. He says this. Now, let me stop here. This sounds like a beautiful story, doesn't it? I thought I asked the right questions leading up to our engagement, but discovered my mistake of not asking enough tough questions. Going to the point that you were mentioning earlier, Dr. Velma. It didn't take long to determine how my error of not exploring what was at the heart of who she was got me into trouble.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that, because a lot of times two things can happen at this point, right? One, you back up and you start having those tough questions, those tough conversations, or for some, they think, you know what? Well, I got time, I got time to do it. And then I just thought about it, maybe a bonus, someone just may run,
That's true. That's true.
Ghosting is real these days. So I want to talk about that. What was it like for you to have that conversation? As you mentioned, these are real conversations, Dr. Velma, about the importance of having those tough conversations, but not always taking the opportunity to do it.
Because I think a lot of, in many of the cases, and in the men I surveyed, they were a little uncomfortable. And that's, again, going back to where we've come from and where we are now and what we are no longer practicing. Because, again, my definition of high school dating is just that. We date like in high school and expect to marry someone like that. And we have no idea, no clue who they are. And that's why the strategy has to change. We've always had it. I mean, the book is over 2,000 years old that give us all kinds of clues, but no one wants to dust off that big Bible over there and pick it up and find out what clues we've been given. And so that was the whole idea of bringing this back to life, is having those conversations and the clues we've been given. And so when you think about what he said, he had not taken the time to really examine who she was. She didn't ask the tough questions. And that goes back to chapter 1. Grayson opens up the conference with those surveys and talks about the red flags that you ignore. You're not paying. Most people don't know what a red flag is in dating and what you're supposed to be looking for as you're having the conversations and moving along. Some of us have had red flags and ignored them because we didn't know what they were. And so he then reveals the problem he had, because he had already gotten captivated with what he observed about her. And that's the biggest problem. We fall in love with what we see versus waiting to fall in love with what we discovered that's in the heart of that person. That is important.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's where we see the mirror image of what we saw in this book, and with Grayson and Veronica talking to the women. Exactly that point. Ignoring the red flags, not paying attention, and being able to think, you know what? Yeah, And so I think, that is the thing that so many people can fall for. Ellen has a question here, Dr. Velma. Do you think it's because some folks only are trying to see if they will be a couple without trying to be in a relationship? For women, they may think he will not want her. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. It is the same idea of falling in love with the idea of finding someone, because we hear these statistics all the time and it's like women are in a hurry because they say there's more women than men. Well, I just believe there's going to be some women that's going to miss out, period. So let's not worry about numbers. Let's just worry about ourselves and whether or not we're ready for that person when they arrive, and knowing how to discover who they are. And so that's the problem. We fall in love with the idea of, "Ooh, I found someone. He could be the one." I hear women say that all the time. Well, how do you know that? And so quickly. But I do talk about in the Black Book the a number of tests and trials, and it's important for us to learn to practice all of that stuff. All those clues are already given to us and we're not even using them. So the strategy changes. You wouldn't think to ask those tough questions about her financial history and experience, about her livelihood, have she ever lost a place, about her health, if she has health issues or mental health issues, and whether or not she's addressed them and being treated for them. Some people have fallen in love with people with these issues and never asked, but now they're facing these issues after they marry them. And so tough questions are important. And so to Ellen's question, yeah, people fall in love with the idea that they think they found someone without really examining who this person is. So high school dating is what we continue to practice, and it's broken. There's no commitment in it, and it just continues to spiral out of control unless we change the strategy in discovering our mate.
Yeah. Time is getting away from us, Dr. Bim, as it always does.
What? Cyrus. I love it because I could tell you read this book.
Yeah. Time is getting away, but I want to bring in the wife, since it's not a spoiler anymore because we've already mentioned her before. So we were able to discover that, of course, because I think some people, and this is, I think, I won't say partially my fault, but I never focused and never talked about the wife until this book came out, because she didn't have a prominent role in the series until now. So let's start there. Why did you decide this was a time to let her have a presence?
It's important because here we have Grayson, and people are very critical, even of me, of what your true credentials are. What expertise do you have? These people with 5 years as a certified dating and relationship coach, 5 years is not a long time. What's your experience? What have you accomplished in this arena? And so I wanted people to see how Grayson discovered his wife, and to present her as a supporter of what he does for women and men. And that was important to show, because we have to make sure that we are in this thing together, depending on what we each have to do, not to come into a situation and you're fighting what the person has been called to do. So that's so important. As we had conversations about this before, Cyrus said, people have to understand this is what I do for living. This is what I've learned over my 50th wedding anniversary is next month. This is what I've discovered over time. Why not share it with someone? So that's where wisdom comes in. And we don't rely on wisdom much anymore. When we are told multiple times in Proverbs to get wisdom, bind it.
Right.
It would be your life. And so yet we don't use that kind of, we don't take that kind of approach. And we've been given the roadmap and the tools, and we're just not using them.
Yeah. So let's take the book and bring it into our world, Dr. Velma, as we wrap up here. Because as you mentioned throughout this conversation, these are real conversations that are having, that should be had, that can help to avoid situations both for women and men when it comes to dating, preparing for marriage, looking for a mate. What do you hope someone, even though they pick up this book as fiction, what do you hope it does for them in thinking about their own life?
Give them something to think about. Give them something. Hope they discover something about themselves in there. Because I want you to understand that even though many of the women in here, at least 4 of them, are considered narcissistic, you might have some of those elements and you don't know. I had a conversation recently where the person said, well, I don't know if I should really follow what the books are giving the examples of because I'm a little stubborn. Well, that's a revelation of a red flag right there. Who wants to date someone that's stubborn or even marry someone that's stubborn? So we have some of those examples in there. So I hope that they'll take away something that maybe they hadn't thought about before, because these are tools that have been around for thousands of years. We just have fallen away from them, and they're there for a reason.
I want to close with this, Dr. Van, because you mentioned this now a couple of times. It really
Wait a minute, Cyrus. I thought you were getting ready to pray.
Oh no!
let me close.
No.
All right, Mississippi.
Look, no. But hey, you've mentioned something. It is biblical, that what I was going to talk. But this is something that it confuses me. Maybe it shouldn't confuse me, because you brought up twice now. This is why I'm bringing it up. About we've had this for thousands of years, and you're talking, of course, about God's word, the Bible.
Yeah.
But it is so interesting how now people see that as irrelevant to their lives, and they do go to the gurus, like what you're talking about, the ones we find online, the ones who write these books. Not to say that they don't offer some great advice. But what do you hope people do in thinking about the Bible differently when it comes to thinking about a mate, when it comes to reading the series?
Go in and reference it because, like I said, when we talked before about the over 65 scriptures that discuss a fool, if you just read that list, that would arm you with enough information to know, wait a minute, he's sounding like that fool God talked about. Wait, he's acting like that fool God talked about. So it's just so much that's there, just like you and I talked about the Proverbs 31 woman. What does that look like? What is a ruby? What should she look like? And again, if Grayson talks to the men about the importance of making sure they're at ruby level, because that's what they're pursuing, a woman at ruby level. Keep in mind that none of this means that we are perfect people. Right. That's impossible. The word already tells us that none exists. What it does is arms you and better prepares you, gives you something that you should be looking at, examining the red flags, all the things we talk about. So it helps you to really discover that. So that's why, I'm not telling anybody to pick up the Bible, but I am telling you that it's already told us, it's already given us the blueprint of what we should be looking for. So, and it's 2,000 years old, but we're living in a time where people think they already know anything, and that's fine. Women empowerment, all of that. I've been a part of that process too. And you'll see in here, we talk about the importance of establishing and accepting the worth that God has placed on your life as a woman, because Adam could not be alone. God said it wasn't good. Let me create something good for him, because it's not good for man to be alone. There become a time in that man's life, it's going to be his time to now pursue looking for his mate. And so it's important for us to make sure that we understand what that process is and to better prepare ourselves for it.
Love that. Again, everyone, Dr. Velma Bagby has been our guest. Great conversation, Dr. Velma. It always is, though. It always
you are good, Cyrus, with your questions.
Well, look, you gave me great material with the books. So for those who have not picked them up, let's go through them. Again, the first book, The Catch No One Wants, I have it highlighted in the carousel for you guys here on Amazon. It's available in paperback and Kindle. All the Kindles, guys, are only 99 cents for this series. And then, of course, we have The Wrong Catch. You guys can see it there. Available in paperback and Kindle as well. Have it highlighted for you guys there on Amazon. And then the newest book, the one you guys see here, The Wrong Catch, She'll Tear Down the House. Available now as well in paperback and Kindle. So make sure you guys grab that as well. Dr. Velma, really do appreciate you in these conversations. How can our viewers stay connected with you?
They can reach me on any of the platforms. I'm on all the social media platforms as Dr. Velma Bagby, but also you can subscribe to my website, drvelmabagby.com, and look forward to hearing your response and reading your reviews. And I love getting feedback, so make sure you reach out.
All right, Dr. Velma, always a pleasure. And we thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb saying thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.